Okay, please welcome to our Monday Colloquium. It's my true pleasure to introduce Alberto Ciancio to you, who is familiar to all of you. He has is a graduate of our econ program. On one hand, has an interest in migration and policy enforcement, but a few years ago he also decided that he would like to explore development economics and brought some really interesting perspectives into this. So he's been working with the Mortality project over the last few years. He'll be presenting today on a project that we've done on how to listen information around expectations and sexual behaviors. Dr. will tell you all about what it is. So without much further ado,
great. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. So this project is about a randomized experiment we did in Malawi, where we provided information on mortality, and we look at the effect on sexual behavior, which is an important behavior in a context like Malawi, where there is high HIV prevalence. So the motivation for this for all this project was that we observed very big changes in life expectancy in the last decades in Africa. Okay, so in the left graph you can see survival probabilities, 10-year survival probabilities by several age groups, and you can see that the survival probability increased in the 70s and the 80s, and then there was a huge decline, huge drop in the 90s with the onset of the HIV epidemic, and then there was a rapid rebound thanks to the availability of treatment, of ART treatment in particular. So you can imagine that in such a context, it may be very hard for individuals to form accurate survival expectations. So the graph on the right shows the distribution of subjective survival probabilities in several years. And it also plots the blue line, which is the lifetime objective survival probabilities. So this box will show like the distribution of what people expect, and the blue line is what people actually survive. And you see that in general, people are moderately pessimistic about their chances of survival. And this is important because there is several papers that show how important is life expectancy for several kinds of behavior.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. It's important, life expectancy is important for fertility decision, for labor supply decision, investment in human capital, and investment in health. Now, an important health behavior in a context like Malawi with high HIV prevalence is sexual behavior. And really the starting point of this project was a paper by Adeline Delavan and Hans Peter on sexual behavior, where they show that expectation about survival and expectation about HIV transmission are really important determinants of risky sexual behavior. And by risky sexual behavior, I mean having sex with multiple partners instead of having sex with just one partner, or like not using condoms. And then they ran some simulations, and they find that an information campaign on mortality would reduce risky sexual behavior. And the idea is that people are generally pessimistic about their chance of survival. If you give them information about survival, they're gonna think they're gonna live longer, and so they're gonna value more the future. And because of that, they will reduce risky sexual behavior. That's the mechanism that they have in mind. They also show that instead an information campaign on transmission risk, on HIV, actually would increase risky sexual behavior because people overestimate the transmission risk. They think that every time you have sex with someone with HIV, there is a very high chance that you become HIV positive, which is not really the case. So this project, basically, what it does is running a randomized control trial to actually test that hypothesis. That's an information campaign on mortality risk, reduce risky sexual behavior. Okay? And what we do a randomized control trial where we provide information only to the treatment group about the survival of individuals in good and bad. And really the key to understand the mechanism through which this intervention is effective is having data on expectations. This data that we collect on survival expectation of HIV transmission risk, HIV status, are really important to understand why the intervention was effective in modifying sexual behavior. And this data comes from the Malawi longitudinal study of family and health that most of you know. This is a panel that followed individuals from 1998, and from 2012, for at least in the period we're going to consider, focus on mature adults, so individuals who are 45 years and above. The way we ask expectation in this context is using a method with peanuts. Okay, so people here are not very educated in Malawi, so we cannot, it's very hard to ask probabilities. So what we do is to have, to give them 10 peanuts, and then they have a ball, and the more peanuts they put in a ball, the more likely an event occurs. Okay. And then we also allow them to split the peanut to have this 5% interval. Okay, so that's a very creative method to ask probabilities in this context. And so, for example, for all mortality expectation, what we ask is pick the number of peanuts to express the likelihood that you will die in a 5-year period or in a 10-year period. So this is a mortality expectation, and then we reverse in survival expectation. We also ask what we call population mortality expectations. So these are the expectations about a representative, how much is going to survive a representative individual in your community who is your age and sex. And we ask this by health status. So we ask what is the probability that someone who is healthy will survive, will die in 5 years, who is HIV positive, who is sick with AIDS, or is sick with AIDS but treated with ART. These survival probabilities contain actually meaningful information. For example, subjective survival probabilities are good predictors of actual survival. So here in this graph, I show you the percentage of dead people in 2017, of dead respondents in 2017, by their subjective survival probability in 2010. And you see that the percentage of dead people in 2017 is declining in subjective survival probability. So there is some actual information coming from this. They answer this question with thinking about what they're saying. But let me now tell you a little bit more about this intervention. So first of all, this intervention we call it the benefits of knowledge, or BEN-NO. Okay, so that's what we refer to our intervention. Do you have a question? Yeah.
On that last slide,
Yes.
say a little bit more about the actual, or how are you calculating that? Is that predicted based on their HIV status?
So the actual, the percentage of that. So
It's for
no,
an individual.
that is like how many people are actually dead in 2017. How many of the respondents are dead? So it's like the probability you are dead in 2017 by the subject survival probability in 2010.
Oh,
So these actually people who are dead. There's no probability. It's just like how many
Sorry.
are actually dead.
But just get simple, I don't think It's supposed to add automatically. All of them?
No, this is how many, like, okay, so in 2010, some people said, some respondents said they have subjective survival probability of 0, right? How many of these people who said that they had a subjective survival probability of 0 were dead in 2017? Sorry if I was not very clear. Okay, and you see that it's much higher than for the people who said that their subjective survival probability was 1. Okay, among those that said that their subjective survival probability in 5 years is 1, so that for sure they're gonna be alive, only few people are there. Yeah.
Sorry, just around the timeline, what's the underlying factor to redundancy in this time period? Is it like
It's very at this point. So we're looking at 2017, 2018. Access to ART is quite widespread. So yeah. So ART was introduced in 2008 in Malawi. So at this point, most of the people are that's it.
And sorry, just to clarify, you focus on about 45.
So then for two reasons. One is that this is the population we were working with. So that's because this intervention was done together with the Malawi Longitudinal Study of Family Health. At that point was focusing on much of that. We think this is still an important population because I'm going to show you that sexual behavior is still quite high among these people. And HIV prevalence is becoming higher and higher, even among these adults, because they were HIV positive before, now they are surviving, and so the HIV prevalence is quite high also among these older.
Okay, sorry, so just because the studies in the US have shown that access to the ART drug increases for HCV like dosing relatively soon. So if you, I guess you know when the person got the virus, because otherwise if we focus on 45-year-olds, presumably they got this at a younger cohort, like they are in different cohorts. You would miss them because they wouldn't be there in the data. So I just wondered if that would have any bearing.
No, I don't think so. Okay, so you have some concerns in terms of external validity? Yes, like it's going to be, you cannot directly like think, there's going to be some concern about that this apply also to younger folks. And then I agree, that is a concern. But we have a randomized setting, so in this sense, it's less concerning for internal validity. Okay, so I was thinking about this, about the intervention. So the intervention had two components. One is a first component where we try to provide some narratives about people living longer in Malawi. And the second part is where we try to provide precise statistical information about how much people are surviving, what are the survival probabilities in rural Malawi. So for the first part, we use some videos where we hired these amazing actors, and then we're reading a script that we provided to them. And they're basically talking about how, in general, people are living longer in Malawi. And we try to have this as a general message. So it's true both for people who are HIV negative and people who are HIV positive. So for example, the woman talks about the husband who is now under treatment, and he's now is more healthy, is expected to survive longer. But this is not just about HIV, it's also people are generally, they observe that people generally in Malawi live long. So it's a general message of, in Malawi nowadays, people live long. For the statistical information, we had to use some visual aids. And this information was gender and age group specific. So for example, this on the left was the information sheet that was given to men that were aged 45 and 49. and this is spread for women from 60 to 64. Okay? So for example, the women could see that there are like, and this will of course explain, we're not just given, we'll just explain by the interviewer. So they were shown like 10, for example, 10 women in blue today, and blue means they are alive. And then in 5 years from now, one woman is in red, which means one out of 10 women will be dead in 5 years. And then in 10 years from now, like between 2 and 3 people, between 2 and 3 women will be dead.
And these are based on the actual.
And these are based.
I mean, I'm surprised that mortality rates are so much higher for women than men.
Oh, this is sorry, they include the same age group.
If I could read that.
Sorry, it's a bit small. Yeah, so this intervention, and this is actually not smaller. Sorry. So this intervention was done a few days after the 2017 survey, which served as our baseline. Okay, so the 2017 is the baseline, where we interview around 1,500 people. And then we randomize respondents in a treatment and a control group. And we randomize this at the village level. And in practice, what we do is we basically take, we match the villages by size and by region. And then we randomize one to treatment and one to control. Just to have roughly the same number of individuals between treatment and control. And we do this by village level to avoid spillovers between treatment and control group, not within treatment and within control. That's very point. Yeah. So the treatment group, a few days after, gets the information that I just shown you, and then a few days after the intervention, both the treatment and control group receive a visit by the HIV testing and counseling team. So at this stage, we learn their HIV status, and they also learn their HIV status. And crucially, we also ask them their own mortality expectations, which is important because then we know, just a few days after the intervention, before any possible change in sexual behavior, what is the effect on intervention on their beliefs. And then, a year after, 2018, we asked all the questions about the expectation about sexual behavior. And the sexual behavior was question about the last year, sexual behavior in the last year. So, so here we can measure the effects in the long run of on beliefs and sexual behavior. Also, the beliefs that can be affected by sexual behavior, right? So there could be a reaction by of beliefs, a feedback effect of sexual behavior on beliefs, and that is going to show up in 2018. What is the situation at baseline? So at baseline, these are the summary statistics, like the mean in the population. So we have individuals who are quite old, so 59 on average, and we have a little bit more women, and education is quite low. The prevalence in HIV is 7.5%, which is increasing in these age groups. And expectations are mostly consistent with each other, in the sense that, for example, all the average on survival for 5 years is larger than 10 years survival. And the survival for a hypothetical individual who is healthy is higher than the survival for a hypothetical individual who is HIV positive, which is higher than someone who is sick with AIDS, which is lower than someone who is treated with ART. We also asked the unconditional survival probability, so for a person who is like an average individual, independent from health status, and you see that this is just slightly below the one for being healthy, which also makes sense. They generally overestimate their the HIV probability, which is higher than the HIV prevalence. In sexual behavior, I was saying before, people here, even they are quite sexually active. So 65% of people are sexually active. And a good condom use is quite low, but a good number of people engage in sex with multiple partners. So in particular, conditional having sex, around 11% of sex with multiple partners. So it's kind of a meaningful proportion of our individuals. So if we look at this by treatment status, the two are quite balanced, especially in age, gender, schooling, cognitive score. They have some imbalance in the HIV test. So in HIV, so the treatment group is slightly more HIV positive, which also has an effect, of course, on the HIV probability. So all the expectations are related to HIV. But we're gonna look at our results also always by HIV status. And once we just focus on the HIV negative, you see that the balance is quite perfect between the two groups. And we have no reason to. There is no particular reason to think that there was some selection in the two groups. It was just a bit random. How is the situation in terms of pessimism at baseline? So 2017 was a strange year in the sense it was a bit of good year economically, so it was good rainfall. So that means that this year actually people are slightly more optimistic than the usual. And so here you see, but still the majority is pessimistic. Here you see that the subjective survival probability, and on the x-axis you see the objective in survival probability, the one that we provided in our intervention. And this line, the diagonal line, is when the two are equal to each other. So you see that most of the people are pessimistic, and there are a few that are optimistic. The blue line is the mean subjective survival probability, which is quite flat. Also because one of the reasons which is flat is that even though women are supposed to survive longer, are generally more pessimistic than men. So you see here the proportion of people who are too pessimistic and the objective information. You see that generally women who are the women who are the squares and men are the diamond. So you see that women are generally more pessimistic than men. Okay, yeah.
What would be sort of the reference group that you would expect? Like if the subjective probabilities match the objective probabilities, what value should that percentage be in the previous value?
In this one on the
Like I'm just trying to interpret the level. What is the level in this figure? And what is that 0.2 or 0.4? Is that good or bad or like accurate or not accurate?
So here doesn't really, this is just the proportion to pessimistic. So it doesn't give you, and maybe this picture is better in understanding the accuracy. Like here you see that people who are here are very, very pessimistic. You see the distance with respect to the diagonal line. You see how big is the difference. So these people here are kind of accurate, let's say. And the people who are here are very pessimistic.
Is that based on age?
that is based, these are information which remember are gender and age group specific, right?
For the life.
Yeah, for the life.
But young people enter into a variety of platforms.
Correct. Yeah. So here it's going to be younger people, and it's also like women, because those are the ones that live long. Okay, so we want to understand what are the effects of the intervention on beliefs and sexual behavior, and to understand the channel for which they can affect, the information intervention can affect these outcomes. We got a very simple model, just to give an idea of what are the channels, to understand what are the possible channels. So the model will be a simple model that tries to follow what happened very closely, what happened in the field. Okay, so we have a model with where an individual has 3 periods left to live, and where the first period in our mind is 2017, the second period is 2018, the follow-up, and the third period is whatever is left to live after 2018. Okay. So in period 1, this individual has a choice to make. Has to decide whether to engage in risky sex or safe sex. Well, risky sex is having sex with multiple partners. And then in period 1, he's going to enjoy a utility VA. So it's like sex behavior specific. So in principle, we can think that engaging in sex with multiple partners can be more enjoyable than having sex with only one partner. So that is captured by that utility function. And then period 2 and 3, things are much easier, much simpler. There is no choice. They're going to enjoy utility U, which is U minus if they are HIV negative, or U plus if they are HIV positive. And we think that the utility of being healthy is higher than the utility of being with HIV. Okay, that's assumption. Now, the period 1 has these different stages, right? So there was the baseline, then there was the information intervention, and then there was the HIV testing and counseling, right? So we capture this in our model. So first stage is the baseline, and individuals have some beliefs about the world, which we call P1. Okay? And they have beliefs about several different things. So first, they have some beliefs about HIV status and prevalence. So they have a probability F1 of being currently infected with HIV at baseline. They have a probability F1S that the spouse is HIV positive, and they have also probability F population about what is the HIV population prevalence in their community. Then they have some beliefs about survival. They have beliefs about their own survival, which depends on whether HIV negative or HIV positive. So there's going to be S1 minus, S1 plus, depending if they're HIV negative or HIV positive. And then their own survival will be a combination of the probability that they are HIV positive and the 2 survival probabilities. And finally, they have some beliefs about how much people are in general are surviving this context. So there's going to be S-pop minus for HIV negative, S-pop plus for HIV positive. And finally, they have beliefs about HIV transmission. They have a probability Pi1A, which is the probability of becoming HIV positive if you are healthy. And this depends on sexual behavior. If you have sex with multiple partners, then it's more likely that you become HIV positive. And then they have also the belief about what is the technology of transmission. So if I have sex with an HIV positive person, what is the probability that I'm going to become HIV positive? And that is just the technology of transmission, which we call capital Pi. Okay, so what happens later? Yeah.
I have a question about the second
point.
Yeah.
That F in the next period probability, how does that F connect to the F1 of yourself and the F1S of your spouse?
This one?
Yes, how does that both things connect to construct the next period?
So this is just their own.
Oh,
This is on. Yeah. So it's not F, it's not S, it's not both, it's just on.
okay.
So what happens in the intervention stage, stage 2? The intervention stage, the treatment group receives information about mortality and they update beliefs. They update all sorts of beliefs from P1 to P2, while the control group keeps the beliefs of stage 1. Very simple. Then in stage 3, the HPC stage, they learn their HIV status. And so at this point, they're going to be S3, like the survival probability at stage 3 will be dependent on treatment group, control group, or whether they're HIV negative or HIV positive. So there's going to be either T or C and minus or plus. Okay, and then here's the interesting part. So what we call stage 4 is when they have to make a decision about sexual behavior. So we can think that this individual is just trying to maximize the utility in these 3 periods they have left to live. And so the utility in period 1 is just VA, which depends on sexual behavior. So there is a benefit from having sex with multiple partners. And then if they are HIV negative in period 1, they're going to survive with a probability S minus. And they're going to enjoy utility U minus in period 2. Then what happens? If they are still HIV negative with a probability 1 minus pi in period 2, then they're going to survive with a probability S minus to period 3 and enjoy utility U minus. If they become HIV positive in period 2, pi, then they're going to survive with probability S plus and enjoy utility U plus. If they're HIV positive, things are much simpler because it's an absorbing state. So with probability F, they're HIV positive, they will survive to period 2 with probability S plus, and again with probability S plus, they're going to survive to period 2 and enjoy their utility U plus. Okay, so they're gonna choose, they're gonna maximize this, and so choose their risky sexual behavior to maximize this utility function. So they're gonna choose to engage in sex with multiple partners if the utility of engaging with multiple partners is higher than the utility of with safe sex, which gives rise to this inequality, which is perfect to capture all the mechanisms that we have in mind, through which the information intervention can affect sexual behavior. So the first potential mechanism, which is forward-looking behavior, in group, is the following. So if there is a general improvement in survival probabilities, S plus, S minus, and S plus, then you're gonna value in the future more. And in the future, it's better to be healthy than being sick. It's better to be healthy than being HIV positive. And so, because of that, you reduce risk of sexual behavior. Then, if the information intervention modify the relative survival between HIV negative and HIV positive, if I think that now people who are HIV negative survive much longer than HIV positive, which was not the intention of the intervention, but it could have happened, then that's another reason why they could reduce risk of sexual behavior. And finally, there could be a transmission risk mechanism. If people with HIV survive longer, then I realized that there's going to be more people with HIV around me. If people with HIV survive longer, then sex with multiple partners becomes more risky. Because HIV prevalence is going to go up. Yeah.
So I'm missing something. So if your partner The anomalous partner is HIV positive. Is it obvious that multiple partners is risky?
Sorry, say again?
So suppose your partner is HIV positive,
And you know that.
and you know that. So I'm not sure,
Okay.
yeah, and you know,
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure about that. Then it may be riskier to only have sex with your partner than half the time you would have sex with your partner.
Okay, so
And
here,
it would-
so here I'm thinking a framework where you either have sex with your spouse, like let's think like this, either you have sex with your spouse, or you have sex with your spouse and with other partners.
Right.
So in this sense, it's always riskier to have sex with multiple partners.
Why is it riskier? Suppose you have sex 100 times a year with your spouse versus 50 times a year with the spouse, 50 times with other partners, or whom the probability of being HIV positive is 0.16.
So here, because here we're entering, like here is a very simple model where we think just in terms of if you will have just, we are thinking to, that you would also increase your frequency. Like if you have like, we have like 50 times,
It's make it easy for
Yeah.
you to keep the frequency. So,
yeah, we keep the frequency. So here we are thinking a context where you would have the same sex with your spouse, so the 100 times with your spouse, plus sex with other partners. That's what we have in mind.
It's one way to deal with the issues and not assume that what's riskier now, you should change the sexual behavior. But I was wondering about condom use. Are there anything related to condom use? Because also the thing what happens with regular partners, the condom use is lower if this goes back to the Jerry's point. And are you thinking about that?
Yeah, we are also looking at it. So first of all, you're right, in a sense that this model is general, and we can think that one is riskier than the other one. And so this model is general, but that's what we have in mind. That multiple partners in general are riskier than sex with the spouse, but it's, the model per se is quite general. Second, we're gonna also look at condom use. Okay, so yeah.
What would you say about the transmission risk with and without treatment? Someone who's HIV positive.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I guess maybe this you're gonna come to this here pretty before, but with the intervention itself, what are you saying about the transmission risk?
So in the intervention, I'll not say anything, but if people think, understand it's with that people with HIV survive longer, right? Then they can also update the HIV prevalence in the population, because if people who are with HIV survive longer, then you're gonna have more people around who are HIV positive.
Right, but also the key part there, but as to what that means for transmission risk is about treatment and transmission risk when you are on treatment.
Oh,
And my
when
question
you
there-
mean ART?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and so the question is, let's say people update on HIV prevalence, and there people are living longer, and so that increases your risk of coming into contact with someone who's HIV positive. It doesn't necessarily have to imply increased risk of transmission if those people are taking ART.
So if there is a perfect take up in ART,
Yeah,
so then it would, it's like in this context there is not perfect take up of ART, and even if it's accessible, it doesn't mean they always comply and always take up ART. But I agree, in a perfect world where everybody is on ART and follows all the procedures, then it would be less relevant. Yeah. Can I go? So no, because
I'll stop the conversation.
Okay, so then the rest of the model is super simple. Basically, in period 2, which is the 2018 follow-up, both the treatment and control group revised their beliefs because things have changed. 1 year has passed. But an important subset of these beliefs will also be revised as a result of past behavior. So sexual behavior, there's been a change in sexual behavior, possibly, and that could affect a subset of beliefs, like for example, HIV status. Okay? So if I reduce sexual behavior, then it's possible this also has an effect on the probability that I mentioned before. And finally, in period 3, the individual enjoy their utility and eventually die. So that was the framework. Let me explain you how we're going to look at the results. So we're going to first look at the results on sexual behavior. And then we're going to split the results on beliefs in 2 groups. First, we look at the beliefs that are only affected by the intervention. And then, for example, population survival expectations, or on survival in the very short term. And then we're going to look at this, instead of those beliefs, they could be affected by sexual behavior. Like, for example, HIV status, or on survival in the long run, after sexual behavior could have changed. So that's how we conceptually look at these 2 types of beliefs, where in the second type of beliefs, there could be a feedback effect of sexual behavior on those beliefs. Okay, so then let's go to the results. So for sexual behavior, we constructed several measures of riskiness of sex, including also something about condom. So first we look at just at the extensive margin, whether they're sexually active or sexually passive. Then we look at whether they also have multiple sexual partners. So this is an index that is 0 if they are sexually passive, 1 if they have sex with 1 partner, and 2 if they have sex with multiple partners. And then we also introduce condom use. So in the third measure, there's going to be sexually passive, sex with 1 partner, sex with multiple partners with condom, and sex with multiple partners without condom. And this is increasing in the riskiness of sex. We're going to use as order probability specification, where in the dependent variable, we look at sexual behavior in the follow-up. And we look at the effect of treatment, controlling for sexual behavior in 2017, in the past. So in this sense, it's like an uncovered specification. And then we control for individual characteristics like age, gender, and schooling. And we control for, we include fixed effects for the village pair that we use in our randomization, and cluster standard errors at the village level, which was our unit of randomization. And what we find is that generally the intervention was successful in reducing risk of sexual behavior, and both at the extensive margin and the intensive margin. We don't find strong difference by HIV status. We also have to consider that we don't have that many individuals who are HIV positive, so it's hard to find some evidence on HIV positive. If we want to try to understand the magnitude of this result, we did the following exercise. We ran the model, and then this model with the 4 levels of riskiness of sex, and then we ran the model, and then we predicted what is the probability they are in each of these 4 categories by treatment status, and then look at the difference. And what we find is that there is an increase of 2.8 percentage points in the probability they don't have sex, which is roughly an 8% increase. And then there is a 1.4 reduction in the probability that percentage points reduction in the probability that they have sex with multiple partners, or like 19% decrease. And the decrease is also significant condition on having sex. So there is a 13% reduction in the probability of having sex with multiple partners conditional on having sex. Now, it's true that there is the effect on the extensive margin and intensive margin, but really the intensive margin is only relevant for men. Women don't really report having sex with multiple partners, which means that, and they just increase the probability of not having sex. While men adjust both margins. So they are less likely to have sex, but also reduce risky sex. So, interesting, we find that, so one of the strategies to reduce risky sex in this context has been shown that is marriage. People usually in marriage have safer sex, and there has been at least a paper from Greenwood that shows that how like marriage is really instrumental to reduce risky sex in Malawi. And indeed, what we find when we look at the effects of the intervention on marriage, on being married in 2018, we do find a small effect on the probability of being married, a positive effect. So individuals are more likely to be married in 2018 compared for being married in 2017. And all the effect is really for people who are not married in 2017. So this is an effect of becoming married, getting married. Okay, so that's, I think, is an interesting mechanism for which they reduce risky sexual behavior is getting into marriage. That's what it is. Now, these are the effects on the outcomes, but then if you want to understand the mechanism I listed before, forward-looking behavior, transmission risk, we need to go to the expectation state. So for the expectation, the specification is very simple. We're just look at the update in the expectations. And regress is an update on treatment status and all the electron flows. And the first question we have in our mind is whether the intervention was effective in understanding that people live longer nowadays in Malawi. So the first thing we do is to look at population survival expectations. The expectation of representative individual in the population, and we do find that people understand that in Malawi people live longer. We have a 4.2 percentage point increase in survival for healthy and HIV positive, which is a 6% for healthy and a 7% for HIV positive increase. We don't find an effect for people who are sick with AIDS without treatment, perhaps because we emphasize the importance of treatment in this intervention. And we also don't find an effect for unconditional survival probability. So for the survival probability of someone, for the average survival probability, not conditional health status. This is kind of puzzling, but it could be possible result of a perceived increase in the proportion of HIV positive people in the population. If there are more people with HIV in the population, then it's not clear that the unconditional survival probability does have to increase. Then, okay, so it seems that people understand that, I always want to understand people live longer, but doesn't mean that they personally live longer. And the general answer is, there is no clear evidence that this is happening. So the effect is positive, both for HIV negative and positive, but it's not really statistically significant. So they understand people live longer, but they don't really think that this is important for us. Yeah.
This, I'm gonna ask this question on the previous slide, but also this one.
Yeah.
This is like a few days later, and I'm curious.
Yes.
Sorry, the previous one, was that also a few days later?
No. Okay. Sorry.
Can you talk about what happens?
Yeah. Okay. So the population survival expectation were asked a year after, but in principle, we would expect similar results in the short run, in the sense that these are not affected by, should not be affected by your behavior. These are beliefs that in principle you should not affect. It's just how whatever beliefs about the world. And this is correctly, this is the effect right a few days after the intervention, where there was no yet a possible feedback effect and then we're gonna also look later at the effect a year after, and we're gonna see that also there's not gonna be any effect. So why is that there is no effect on survival probabilities? We did some heterogeneity analysis, and we don't find really that people who are like initially pessimistic update more than people who are initially optimistic. So we don't find much effect based on the initial values. So it's not about the statistical information was not really important. Perhaps was more important the narratives that people live long. We do find some effect for those who had a prior that was between 0 and 1, an interior prior, which perhaps kind of indicates that people have, perhaps people with prior 0 and 1 are surviving. There are people who have like private information about health status. They really think they're gonna die in 5 years with certainty. So these people maybe have some private information about their health status, and that's why they don't update. So perhaps this is a story of private information. We also have some demographic difference, but let me, in the interest of time, let me try to move a little bit fast. So, okay, we find that there is no effect on survival probabilities. So it seems that the forward-looking behavior cannot be really the main mechanism that is driving the change in sexual behavior, right? We also find that survival for being healthy didn't particularly increase more than the survival of being HIV positive. So the relative survival mechanism cannot be really the one also driving the results. We're kind of left with the transmission risk. And we do ask something about the transmission risk. We ask what is the probability that you a person who is healthy becomes HIV positive if he has sex with someone who is HIV positive, and what is the probability of becoming HIV positive if he has sex with multiple partners? And this is what we find. We find that there is no treatment effect on the basic technology of HIV transmission, which makes sense. We didn't say anything about the technology. So if you have sex with an HIV positive, that was not affected by the intervention. But we do find an effect instead for the probability of having of becoming HIV positive if you have sex with multiple partners, which is consistent with the idea that there are more individuals who are HIV positive in the population, and so you update upward the probability, the risk of having sex with multiple partners. Finally, we look at those beliefs that could potentially be affected by sexual behavior. And these are like beliefs about HIV status a year after, and beliefs about your subjective probability of surviving a year after. That could also be affected by sexual behavior. Because if I reduce sexual behavior, maybe I expect now I revise upward the subjective survival probability. And what we find is we do find a feedback effect on survival on HIV status. So now these people in the treatment group think that they are less likely to be HIV positive, which is consistent with moving to safer sex. But we don't find much on this subjective survival probabilities. It seems that these subjective survival probabilities are really sticky. They're really harder to manipulate in a way. So it seems that the individuals have some private information and it's really hard to, even though they understand that people live longer, they don't really want to change their beliefs about their survival. The last thing we do is to look at other outcomes, because of course this intervention that can affect sexual behavior as many other things. right? So what we do is look at many different dimensions, and then we did a multiple hypothesis testing. So really what we need to look at are these Q values that can be interpreted as P values. Okay? So we do find that risk is actually significant even in a multiple hypothesis testing framework, so which is good news. And then we find an effect for savings and investment in agriculture. So even though they didn't update their own survival, they updated the population survival, which include their family members. So perhaps that is the reason why they increase investment or economic investment beyond sexual behavior. We cannot really look at the mechanism, but that's a plausible explanation. So let me just conclude. This was the first experiment trying to analyze the causal effect of mortality information on health behavior. What we find is that people really understand that respondents understand that people live longer. We were successful in that, but they don't really think that they personally live longer. And still they decrease the risk in sexual behavior because they are driven by the externalities of other people living longer. And the last point I want to make is that it's really important to have expectations data, because without this expectation data, we would have jumped to a completely different conclusion about the mechanism for which this intervention was effective. Thank you.
I have a broad question.
Yeah.
That has to do with experiment and science. And there's somebody that I know doing experiments. And I always worry about the placebo effect. That you make some because information about mortality. But how do you separate us about mortality and not just doing any intervention? I've seen experiments where they give information about condom use and you find similar effects. And are you concerned that maybe you cannot really separate the mortality and not?
So I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make, that without the expectation data, I would agree. Like I would say, look, I find an effect on sexual behavior. Well, why and what? But the effect of being able to look at all this unraveling of this survival expectation, be able to see what happens in the short run, what happens in the long run, having this data on expectation, this kind of is more confident that that was the mechanism. It's not a proof. But
I was thinking that you could compare with other experiments where then you can see magnitude or something and see.
Yeah, unfortunately fortunately it was the first experiment doing that. But yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I was wondering, does your intervention involve giving them any information about HIV prevalence? Because it seems that the transmission risk mechanism that you find evidence for implies that people have to make the logical link that greater survival will increase overall prevalence. Like they have to make that deductive link themselves, because you don't make it directly, right?
So we don't.
Okay.
We don't do that, and future research will be done. But we were very worried about doing something about transmission risk, because people actually overestimate the transmission risk, and that's good.
Yeah.
The fact that they overestimate transmission risk is good, because if you get the information on that, it perhaps would increase risk of sexual behavior. Yeah.
I think it's weird looking at more variation within the single partner category. So I know that this condom is just 0 in the single partner, because my understanding is that with women, a maid source of risk is actually with their partners. Would you look also at risk of benefit among women with single partners?
Yeah, in general, we find we look at also condom use and single partner, and we generally find an effect also looking at condom use. but the effect is stronger for this multi. For women, it's all about sex, no sex. We find less effect on the risky sex market.
If not, thank you very much.